Welcome into the Big City Sports Podcast. We have another episode coming up today, and it's going to be a little bit shorter. I'm not going to lie. We're just going to recap some football that's happened. We haven't talked football in a little bit. Last week, obviously, the NBA preview. Week before that, NHL. But with me today to talk football is someone who was at the Giants game, and that is Swig. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It was great to go back to the homeland for a weekend. Saw a Knicks game as well. Got back into the Garden. It was my first time there since before COVID hit. So it had been a long time. The Giants actually won for once, which was a pleasant surprise. And pleasant surprise for somebody who drove 9 hours to go to it, but for the draft pick, not so much.
Yeah. Already, I mean, it's October, and you're already talking about the draft. That's where we are right now. But let's talk about the game. You were at the game. It was a contest where a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but it was one of those toss-ups. You see it on the sportsbook app. You're like, all right, is it going to be Carolina coming in? They look great to start the year. Obviously, no Christian McCaffrey. The Giants, with all their injury issues, Saquon out, wide receivers banged up. We didn't know who to gauge here, right? We thought, all right, the Giants have shown some weaknesses. So have the Panthers as of late. So it was a tough game. I personally thought Carolina would win. A lot of people thought so as well, but the Giants took it, and they took it in a pretty ceremonial fashion, big way.
Yeah, I mean it was a very strange game, especially the first three quarters or so. I kind of had a gut feeling when I was walking into the stadium that the Giants might pull that one out, and I don't get that feeling very often because the Giants lose most of the time these days. But I kind of had a feeling because it felt like a game where we might be catching the Panthers at a good time. They're slumping, they're missing some important players, and I know that the Giants are missing several guys as well. But let's be realistic; they're not very talented to begin with. The Panthers, at least at the beginning of the season, showed that I still think they're building something, but they've definitely had the injuries take a pretty severe toll. It was a bizarre first half, especially. But the short version is the Giants defense had by far their best game of the season. And Sam Darnold did not play well in his return to MetLife Stadium. I think it would have been funnier if it was a Jets game, but unfortunately they had to play that game in Carolina to start the year. Darnold did not play well. He got benched in the fourth quarter, and the Giants offense did just enough to pull that one out, even though there weren't any touchdowns scored until I think it was right at the end of the third, beginning of the fourth. But yeah, the Giants, despite all of their injuries on the offensive side of the ball, were able to do enough in the fourth quarter to pull it out.
Yeah. To your point on Sam Darnold, he returns to MetLife, and that's obviously, I bet a lot of Jets fans were there. That's my guess. I mean, they're going up against the Patriots, not a game we would think they'd win, and of course they didn't. But it's got to be a game. If you're a Jets fan, all right, let's go check out our lost possession, whatever you want to, however you feel about Sam Darnold. And he played how he usually played at MetLife Stadium, which is pretty poor. And he found a way to get benched. So that was interesting. But I think that's also big on the Giants' defense. Azeez Ojulari, off the top, I've been high on this kid. I said that they finally got their first pass rusher in a long time in the franchise history. 2.5 sacks on the day, and it was a revenge game for James Bradbury. He had an interception in that one. So I mean, the defense looked phenomenal. I mean, you could say Darnold saw ghosts. You could say Darnold was bad, but I mean, you got to give credit to Patrick Graham's defense for the first time this year.
It's a combination of both. I mean, we all know the Giants, even though on paper their defense looks decent outside of the Blake Martinez injury from the Atlanta game. Everyone else is still relatively healthy except for Jabril Peppers, who got banged up again. But that's not enough for you to say, okay, the Giants defense went from one of the league's better ones last year to right back to the bottom of the league 6 weeks into this season, or 7 weeks into the season now. But give them credit where it's due. They played better. I think the key was, I know the Panthers offensive line is extremely injured, and not having McCaffrey makes it a little bit easier to slow down the run, but the Giants were finally able to slow down the run game, which forced the Panthers to try to have Darnold win the game with his arm. And in this game, he was just not capable of doing that. And I'm not trying to make any smart ass comments, but there were some drops. The Giants were able to get stops on third and fourth downs for once, except for the first drive. And in that first drive, we kind of had had that here we go again feeling, because first drive of the game, Panthers get to 4th and 1. It was like a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and a missed tackle made it a short 4th down. And even on their own side of the 40-yard line, I think it was like their own 38 or so, they went for it 40 seconds into the game and got it. And like, that's what happens when your defense isn't respected. And Hubbard had a few big runs on that drive, and I thought the Giants were fortunate to hold the Panthers to a field goal there, but that ended up being the only points they would score the rest of the day. The Panthers only had 175 yards or so of total offense. They really weren't able to get anything else going after that. The defensive line, so stopped the run. Ojulari had a big game. I thought Leonard Williams was a lot better yesterday. It was a step in the right direction. Like, I still like Ojulari overall, but I'm skeptical that that's going to be anything too sustainable. There were a lot of factors that contributed to the Giants defense having such a good game, but they did capitalize on the opportunity. Give them credit for that. But is it going to happen against the Chiefs next week? I doubt it. And, oh yeah, I'll be at that game too.
Nice. So you get another shot there, another bite of the apple with the Kansas City trip coming up. So that'll be fun. Ojulari up to 5.5 sacks. That's pretty good on his rookie season. I mean, heck, it's only October and he's up to 5.5. So I'm gonna disagree with that point. I'm gonna say that he is a great pass rusher and he's going to have a long impact and a long career in New York. And that might be a bold take early on right here in this season. But I want to get your thoughts on the offense. Devontae Booker looked pretty solid in the running back position. Elijah Penny got about 9 carries. But I mean, it was crazy how Daniel Jones had the catch, obviously, with Dante Pettis. But I mean, Darius Slayton looked pretty good, and it was Evan Ingram who actually led the team in receptions. Your favorite player when you're at the game.
Yeah, go figure. Skill position wise, like, I actually thought Pettis was pretty decent for the Giants last season, and I was a little surprised with that when he didn't make the initial 53-man roster, he didn't end up getting claimed somewhere else. Give him credit, he was good enough in the last 2 games here with everyone else going down pretty much. The Giants did not have Barkley in this game at running back, and then no Kenny Golladay, no Kadarius Toney, no Sterling Shepard. So this was Slayton's first game back since he got injured. John Ross was there. He had a pretty minimal impact in this game. The Giants' offensive line is extremely banged up and pretty ineffective regardless, but Andrew Thomas being out at least 3 weeks does not help because he was the one clear bright spot. Nate Solder looks awful. But Daniel Jones did a little bit of everything. I thought he had a decent game. That one-handed catch was definitely the most fun moment in the stands because we all lost our minds. Like, we saw the trick play coming. Pettis overthrew it just a little, and I thought it was going to be incomplete from where I was sitting at. But that was one hell of a catch from Jones. Got to give him credit there. Got him involved as a runner a little. Like, the stats for him won't jump off the page, but considering the lack of resources around him, he did enough. He didn't put the ball in harm's way, didn't turn it over, protected it. And considering the lack of protection and the reduction in available skill players, that's about all you can ask for him realistically.
You know, Daniel Jones is really tough. I'll say that. I mean,
Yeah.
he took a shot on that catch too. I mean, I'm sitting here like, that's your quarterback. You throw it out there and you get absolutely lit up right after he lost his head in the Dallas game, and he still finds a way to come out and play the next week. Like, this dude is an absolute gamer, and he's an athletic quarterback. Say what you want about his skill on the field, whether you think he's a good passer, whether you think he could be a franchise quarterback. He is what you want at that position from a mentality standpoint of he's going to give it his best chance. He's going to fight. He's going to play through things that might be bothering him, and he's going to do whatever it takes to win. So he's trying his best out there, and it was great to see the Giants come out with a victory.
I mean, considering all the effort I went through to go back there for it, yeah, it had been a long time since I saw the Giants win at MetLife. The last couple of times I went out there, they got blown out. I can't remember which game it was in 2019 that I went to. That was my last one. I went to but the Giants got destroyed that game. I went to a Thursday night game, 2018 against the Eagles. They got destroyed that game too. That was 34-13, I think. I don't think I'd seen the Giants win a game at MetLife for at least 4 or 5 seasons. It was probably 2016 because that was the only year the Giants haven't been terrible in the last 9 years. So that was probably it until now. So good to get that one off the bag. I do not question Daniel Jones's toughness at all. I never have. I'm not going to. But I did like Dante Pettis' quote after the game, by the way, when they asked him about that. Yeah, I threw him a dime right there. And, yeah, I thought I'll give him props for that answer. But it was a win. I doubt it's going to really mean much at the end of the season, but I'll enjoy it for now. Let's move on.
It's a victory Monday. It's a victory Monday. There is not a victory Monday for the New York Jets. They played Big Brother again in the New England Patriots, who tend to dominate the Jets every single season whenever they play. And it happened again this week. And the biggest storyline in this one is the injury to Zach Wilson. Knee issue. He's going to miss some time. So that's obviously problematic for a team that's trying to get some young players experience. And especially with your future quarterback going down, it's not obviously going to help.
No, that's the biggest story. I don't think any of us expected the Jets to win this game regardless. We saw the Patriots play the Jets week 2, week 3, near the beginning of the year. That went about as well. But this one was absolutely embarrassing, even by the Jets standards here, because regardless of the Wilson injury for a second, the Jets had a bye last week. They had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and it was just baffling from the start. Weird play calling. Nobody was ready to play. The coaches clearly didn't have them prepared. There's a lot of blame to go around here. Obviously, the Jets are not going to be as talented as the team they're playing pretty much every week at this point. I don't really mean that as an insult. It's just they're clearly not in a position to win a lot of games this year, but I'm not saying that they should have won this one or anything, but considering they had the extra week to prepare for it, they should be ashamed of themselves for that effort, that preparation, that beginning of the game, that weird sequence of play calling. There was just absolutely nothing to like here. But the Wilson injury is definitely the most important because his development this year, rookie QB, second overall pick, that is the only storyline that's going to matter at the end of this season. And he's going to be out at least 2 to 4 weeks, I think it was, with a sprained PCL in his knee.
Yeah, not good news at all. I was actually listening to the game on the way home from Indiana. I was listening to NFL Network Radio. They go through with game-to-game updates, and Steve Torrey, the host on there, goes, "Well, it appears the Jets are still on their bye week as the Patriots are up 14-0 in the first quarter." So I'm sitting here like, dang, like they kept going game to game with the updates and stuff. But I mean, the Jets, they're just, man, it's tough because this is a year that they really needed to build. They needed to find a way to get better. The defense has looked good at times, and it also has looked not so good at times. One of those times was last week. It was not a good showing. Gave up 54 points total in that contest, so not the best situation for the Jets defensively. What were your takeaways from the Jets defense?
Well, first of all, they gave the Patriots wide receivers a lot of room to operate, which is a bizarre choice. But let's just cut to the chase on this one. I think it's pretty cut and dry. The Patriots scored on 9 of their first 10 possessions. That is problematic for any defense. And the Patriots offense is not exactly the cream of the crop in the NFL right now either. I think it's they also have a rookie quarterback, obviously, with Mac Jones. This is not a team that is known to put up 30, 40 points a week right now. It would be one thing if it was, not, I hate to say it, but the Cowboys offense or maybe the Ravens offense. There's a couple, well, except for this past game for the Ravens, but there's a couple that you might expect at least to put up 30 or 40 most weeks. And if they get to 54, it's not that weird. But the Patriots getting 54 is not a great sign because this is a league average offense at best right now. And the Jets made them look like the best team in the league. And just, I know I said it already. I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but they had 2 weeks to prepare for this. What the hell did they do? I'm really, really baffled by so many things. The coaching staff as a whole deserves a lot of criticism. The players deserve a lot of criticism. The Wilson injury just puts a damper on everything the next few weeks at least as well. There is just no bright spots here. This was humiliating.
There's not. And you bring up the wide receivers having a lot of room to work for the Patriots and everything that they've done this year. There's one name that every single week I keep looking, and I am baffled by this stat. It's one of the crazy stats that you've seen out there. Wide receiver Jacoby Myers for the New England Patriots. He's been in the league since 2019. The Patriots put up 54 points. I was thinking, okay, maybe he scored. No. He has 126 career receptions in the National Football League and has never scored a touchdown. That is absolutely insane. But I mean, that's obviously a point for the Patriots. But I'm sitting here like 54 points. Like he's a big-bodied guy. You'd think he's a red zone weapon, but he has never caught a touchdown pass in 126 receptions.
That is odd. I honestly didn't even notice that. I know that Kendrick Bourne threw the first touchdown pass for the
Yeah.
Patriots because I'm sitting there at the Giants game and I don't look at my phone too often when I'm at a game, like maybe during commercials or at the end of a quarter. But the first time I looked at it during this game, I saw a notification from one of the Twitter guys, Ian Rappaport, Schefter, or whoever, and it said that it's going to be a weird week because there have been 2 touchdowns so far thrown by Kendrick Bourne and Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And it turned, and I ended up being at a very bizarre game, so I just thought that was funny. But I didn't get to watch the Jets game, being at the Giants one yesterday. But when I did get to see highlights when I got back to where I was staying after everything, it was just as bad as I thought. And we can briefly address the backup quarterback situation because even if Wilson was healthy, they had Mike White as the only other active quarterback on the roster, a 5th-round pick. I think it was Western Kentucky, if I remember correctly. I know he got drafted by Dallas, and it's just one of the clear worst backup quarterback situations in the league there. No offense intended, but this is a guy who would be either a 3rd string or a practice squad futures guy for most teams. And for the Jets, like he was the only option because before today, we'll address this in a second. The only other one in the organization is Josh Johnson, the journeyman. And he was on the practice squad, I believe, for this game. So White was the only other active QB, and he did not play well, although he did throw a touchdown pass.
Yeah, he had 202 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. So, I mean,
against a team that was playing everybody back because by the time he came in, it was what, 31-7?
Yeah, and if you look at the receiving totals for the Jets going in, 2 running backs led their team in receptions. Michael Carter with 8, Ty Johnson with 6, 14 catches out of the backfield. So a lot of checkdowns for Mikey White over there, and he found a way to just check down and find the running backs. But you do bring up a good point. We said it in the offseason. I said, look, the second the Jets drafted Zach Wilson, I said, look, you have to get a backup quarterback. That's a veteran. That's your next move. We did that long offseason episode on, okay, what will teams need to address in free agency? We knew Zach Wilson would be going to the Jets, or a quarterback at least. So I said, wait, they need a backup quarterback. And they did not address the situation. And I don't think it's pressing right now, but they did go out and address it by bringing in a Joe Flacco, who was on the team last year, but instead they had a trade with Philly to get him back. So a weird situation, but Joe Flacco's back in the organization. I don't know if he'll start next week, but it's going to be very weird reacquiring someone you could have had back in the offseason.
Right. And I know we mentioned that briefly off the pod here before we started recording. Like a veteran backup, Flacco at least qualifies as that. Obviously, his best football is behind him. He started a few games last year and didn't win any of them. But considering he's had a solid career overall, he'd be a good veteran presence in the locker room. The Jets easily could have given him a minimum contract after last season. And I'm not surprised that he ended up back with the Jets. Even if Wilson didn't get hurt, I wouldn't have been shocked if they just made a trade for him before the deadline. But when he did, you had to get somebody. And while they could have kept Josh Johnson around, I know I like him more than most people do. I mean, we know what both of them are, though. They're journeyman quarterbacks right now. Their best football's behind him. Flacco is at least familiar with the organization, although not the playbook anymore. So, and Mike LaFleur, I don't exactly expect him to dial up anything too creative, and regardless of who the QB is. But yeah, you could have brought him back. You have to give up a 6th-round pick to bring him back to the Jets. That's just bad asset management. I'm not trying to say 6th round is the same as 6th overall, but you're a team like the Jets. You need as many of those picks as possible to try to rebuild.
Yeah, you do. That's poor management up there, trying to find a way to piece it all together. And they failed miserably in that asset, so we can only see where the Jets will go from here. Long road ahead, long season ahead. That's where we stand right here with the Jets. But I want to switch over to a team that got absolutely pummeled last week, and that's the Chicago Bears. They did not look good. The champs came, and they conquered. They came, they saw, they conquered. And they found a way to win this football game. And Justin Fields did not look great. Matt Nagy did not look great, and the Bears did not look great. So it's another week, another loss, another disappointing day for a Bears fan.
Yeah, the Bears are still a weird team. They have bright games here. It's a lot like last year was in some ways, where last year they had a 6-game losing streak in the middle of the season and still somehow managed to sneak their way into the playoffs. And they've beaten a couple of teams with 5 wins this season in the Bengals and the Raiders. And outside of those games, they've looked pretty incompetent for the most part. They still have one of the older rosters in the league. It's so weird. The offensive line was terrible. Fields did not have a good game, and he's been a mixed bag now. He's been the starter for a few weeks, but I still don't think that this season is going to dictate too much results wise for him. Like, yeah, I think he needs to be the starter going forward regardless, but it hasn't been great for him. That Cleveland game was his first start, I believe, and that one was absolutely terrible. But there were better signs after that for a couple weeks, and then they've kind of come back to earth here. The last 2 weeks, they have vulnerable San Francisco and Pittsburgh teams coming up, and knowing the Bears, they're going to find a way to pull out one of those games and be like right around 500 for the bye week, which is just good enough where they're going to convince themselves that they're real contenders, when even if they do make the playoffs again, they are not a threat to win anything too important one if they got there. They're just weird. They played terribly on both sides of the ball against the Buccaneers, and that's not really surprising. The Buccaneers won the Super Bowl. They're one of the best teams in the league. But the Bears, I do think, have one bright spot. Khalil Herbert, I think, has been really, really solid for them. I said last year I liked the Darnell Mooney pick in the 5th round. I said I liked the Khalil Herbert pick too. I like my diamonds in the rough kind of guys here. But one upside of Montgomery being hurt, I thought he looked good even in this game. But yeah, he can only do so much by himself.
Yeah, right now it is Khalil Herbert's backfield. I mean, no doubt about it. Damian Williams was activated off the COVID list. We'll get to the issues surrounding the team here in a second. But, Damian Williams was activated. A lot of people thought, okay, ESPN projected his fantasy points to 9, thinking he'd be the starter. And I'm like, there ain't no chance. Like, Herbert showed it last week. Williams still trying to get acclimated, re-up to where he is. Williams only had 3 carries in the game as opposed to Khalil Herbert's 18. And Herbert also had 5 catches out of the backfield. So he's doing everything well. And him and Montgomery, I don't think Herbert's touches will go down once Montgomery comes back. They're going to put those two out there together in some formations. I know Matt Nagy will really try to get creative with that and find a way to screw things up. But, that's an opportunity for multiple backs to be used. Herbert looks electric. Montgomery looks great. So a good spot.
Well, the fact that both of them look legitimately good behind that
that's
offensive
the
line of human turnstiles. Right? Yeah, how is that possible? I gotta say, I'm impressed with the running backs. Not the running game as a whole, though. That offensive line needs a lot of work. I'm curious to see if and when Tevin Jenkins will make a debut this season. But let's be realistic. Even if he does, he's only going to be able to impact so much. And this is still going to be a rookie who played right tackle at Oklahoma State. That's probably going to be the left tackle whenever he debuts. There's going to be a learning curve. So the Bears need a lot of work there. Skill position wise, there's honestly not a lot to talk about receiver wise. Like Allen Robinson's healthy, for example, but the Bears passing game is limited at best. They have a rookie quarterback who's still learning. They have a bad and injured offensive line. There's not a whole lot they can do there. So I don't expect this Bears team to be someone who's going to score more than 20 points in a game very regularly. So that's going to put some pressure on the defense, and that defense is talented. They've had some moments this year, but it's also inconsistent as hell.
I can't speak for the man himself, but Allen Robinson has to be pissed right now. I mean, think about it. Contract year, you re-up with the Bears thinking Dalton's going to be the starter. At least that was your thought process heading into the season. You said that right after Dalton signed. You said, all right, I'm in. He signed the franchise tag. He's making a lot of money. Good for him. But he's also a free agent at year's end. His stats are down because he's not getting the football. That's something he could pitch to people, showing that he's been consistent up to this point. But right now, he has got to be pissed, realizing he's only losing money by going out there each Sunday. And it's not a good spot for him at all. So hopefully he can find a way to get going for his career. But as the Bears as a whole, you brought up the point a little bit ago about them just be breaking even. Like they're completely even every single year. They're not good. They're not bad. And that is one of the worst spots you can be in football. You're trading first round picks for players that are talented or will have some sort of impact on your future. There is no really good thing about this Bears team. I mean, they had the one weird year where they went 12-4, but outside of that, everything is just they're in purgatory. That's how they are. They play football and they're up and down, up and down, up and down, and it stays consistent, but it's not enough to get people fired. It's not enough to elevate you to the playoffs or at least win in the playoffs, and it's not bad enough to where you get a good pick. So they are just breaking even for a solid 4 years right now.
That's probably the best way to sum it up. The Bears are not an easy team to sum up in one sentence. So over the last few years, they have good games. Like this year, they started off with that shit show against the Rams in Week 1, and then they beat the Bengals, and that win looks a little bit better now. The Bengals are having a nice year so far. They beat the Lions. That's expected, I guess. And then they played the Raiders at an opportune time, kind of similar to Giants caught Carolina at a good time. The Bears definitely caught the Vegas at a good time, but they took care of business. And there were some good signs, especially from the defense. And then the last couple of weeks, especially this one, there was nothing good on either side of the ball other than Khalil Herbert. And it's just every time you think they have the Bears figured out as a fan or as somebody who covers them on a podcast, you just don't. There's always going to be some weird wrinkles. So I guess the best way to say it here, best primer, is expect the unexpected, expect a few random wins here and there, and expect somewhere between 5 and 9 wins in general. They will probably end up in that spot.
Yeah, they've done it for a while now, and that's really nothing else to talk about here. Tom Brady played a hell of a ball game, 38-3 final score there. The Bears offense didn't get going. Their defense is old, aging, and we've been beating a dead horse with talking about the Bears, saying about their issues, and none of it's being fixed. But I do want to bring up one point. Head coach Matt Nagy has tested positive for COVID. Not sure about his status on Sunday, but we will keep you updated as that continues on. But outside of that, there isn't really anything else about this Bears team that's been positive.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that situation. Nagy and I think the special teams coach testing positive. There's 4 players in quarantine. The Bears had some COVID issues going into this game against the Buccaneers, so that's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. At least Justin Fields got through the game healthy and alive, and his development is still a huge key for the Bears season. And the 49ers haven't been the same the last couple of weeks. They just played a pretty rough one on Sunday Night Football yesterday. Is that a spot where the Bears could bounce back? Yeah, it's absolutely possible. But yeah, they're just a weird team. They're just a roller coaster, and you can't ever figure out what the hell they're trying to do. This game was absolute dog shit, and they've had a couple of those. They're going to have a couple more, and they're going to have a couple where they look like a team that might actually be building something. So that's got to be frustrating. I think if they don't make the playoffs, if they finish below 8-9 or 9-8 or whatever the hell will get them in, that might be enough to force some change. I don't usually like change just for change's sake, but I don't think that's what it would be for the Bears at this point. They've kept these guys around a while and they haven't gotten any consistency whatsoever.
Matt Nagy should share an apartment with Jeremy Colleton when they're both fired, but that's a conversation for next week. We will be recapping some hockey. The NBA obviously started as well, so we'll keep you updated on that next week and the episode that comes out there. But that's going to do it for today. Talked to all 3 NFL teams. Hopefully everything went well. And be sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Make sure you leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a comment, and do all that good stuff. Leave a review. And yeah, that's going to do it for today. So for Swig, I'm Dylan, and we will see you next time.